Coming up on 5 Minute News. FBI chief warns violent domestic terrorism growing in US. Biden vows enough vaccine for all US adults by end of May. And eating meat raises risk of heart disease, diabetes, and pneumonia. It's Wednesday, March 3. I'm Anthony Davis. FBI Director Christopher Wray bluntly labelled the January riot at the US Capitol as domestic terrorism on Tuesday and warned of a rapidly growing threat of homegrown violent extremism that law enforcement is scrambling to confront through thousands of investigations. Wray also defended to lawmakers his own agency's handling of an intelligence report that warned of the prospect for violence on January 6, and he firmly rejected false claims advanced by some Republicans that anti-Trump groups had organized the deadly riot that began when a violent mob stormed the building as Congress was gathering to certify results of the presidential election. Wray's testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, his first before Congress since the insurrection, was the latest in a series of hearings centered on the law enforcement response to the Capitol insurrection. Lawmakers pressed him not only about possible intelligence and communication failures ahead of the riot, but also about the threat of violence from white supremacists, militias, and other extremists that the FBI says it is prioritizing with the same urgency as the menace of international terrorism organizations. The violence at the Capitol made clear that a law enforcement agency that remade itself after the September 11, 2001 attacks to deal with international terrorism is now laboring to address homegrown violence by white Americans. President Joe Biden's administration has tasked his National Intelligence Director to work with the FBI and Department of Homeland Security to address the threat. The number of white supremacist arrests has almost tripled, he said. President Joe Biden said on Tuesday that the US expects to take delivery of enough coronavirus vaccines for all adult Americans by the end of May, 2 months earlier than anticipated, as his administration announced that drug maker Merck & Co. will help produce rival Johnson & Johnson's newly approved shot. With the bolstered supply, Biden also announced he would be using the powers of the federal government to direct all states to prioritize vaccinating teachers, and said the federal government would provide the doses directly through its pharmacy program. He challenged states to administer at least one dose of the vaccine to all teachers by the end of March, as part of his administration's efforts to reopen more schools across the nation. We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May, said Biden, who likened the partnership between the two drug companies to the spirit of the national cooperation during World War II. The announcement comes as the White House looks to speed the production of the single-dose J&J vaccine and accelerate the nation's plans to reach herd immunity in the US and begin restoring normalcy after the pandemic. Biden noted that vaccine supply was only one bottleneck towards that goal, and that the new challenge would be injecting doses into arms as swiftly as possible. To that end, the Biden administration told governors on Tuesday to prepare for their supplies of vaccine to continue to climb over the coming weeks. Additional doses are also heading toward a federally backed program to administer doses in more accessible retail pharmacies. Meanwhile, the governor of Texas, Republican Greg Abbott, has just announced that he is rescinding the statewide mask mandate and allowing businesses to reopen at full capacity starting next week, despite ongoing concerns about the coronavirus pandemic, gambling his popularity against the health risks of reopening too soon. Eating meat regularly increases someone's risk of developing heart disease, diabetes, pneumonia, and other serious illness, research has found. It's already known that intake of red and processed meat heightens the risk of being diagnosed with bowel cancer, but these findings are the first to assess whether meat consumption is linked to any of the 25 non-cancerous illnesses that most commonly lead to people being admitted to hospital. The academics from Oxford University who published the study found that consumption of red meat, processed meat, and poultry meat, such as chicken and turkey, either alone or together at least 3 times a week, was linked to a greater risk of 9 different illnesses. Their results add to the growing evidence from researchers and the World Health Organization that eating too much meat, especially red and processed meat, can damage health. The findings, published in the journal BMC magazine, are based on analysis of the health records of 474,985 middle-aged Britons. The researchers examined details provided about their diets with information from their medical records about hospital admissions and also mortality data for an average of 8 years. The study concluded, on average, participants who reported consuming meat regularly was associated with higher risks of heart disease, pneumonia, diverticular disease, colon polyps and diabetes, and higher consumption of poultry meat was associated with higher risks of gastroesophageal reflux disease, gastritis and duodenitis, diverticular disease, gallbladder disease, and diabetes. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.